An original story, narrated exclusively for Love Written in Silence. The butler led her through corridors she had not walked in 5 years. Lydia kept her gaze steady, though her heart beat against her ribs like a trapped bird. The walls were the same pale gray. The portraits still hung in their gilded frames. The scent of beeswax and old wood had not changed. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. In her small rented room above the apothecary in Bath. On the coach that brought her north through rain-slicked roads. In the sleepless hours before dawn when memory became too vivid to bear. But now that she stood here, the words felt fragile and insufficient. The butler paused before a door she knew well. The library. He knocked twice, then opened it without waiting for a reply. "Miss Ashford, Your Grace." Jonathan stood near the window, his back to the door. His shoulders were broader than she remembered. Or perhaps it was only the cut of his coat. His hair, dark and slightly too long, caught the lamplight. He did not turn immediately. The butler withdrew. The door closed with a soft click. Lydia remained where she was, her hands folded over the handkerchief she had carried across 3 counties. When he finally turned, his expression was unreadable. His eyes, gray as winter sky, met hers without flinching. Lydia, her name spoken after so long, nearly undid her. "Your Grace," she curtsied, though the formality felt absurd. "Don't." His voice was quiet, but firm. "Not you." She straightened. "I came to return something of yours." She held out the handkerchief. He looked at it, but did not move to take it. "You came all this way for that." It seemed important. "It's been 5 years." "Yes." He crossed the room slowly, stopping an arm's length away, close enough that she could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes. Close enough that she could smell the faint scent of tobacco and ink. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I heard something. In Bath. A rumor." "What rumor?" "That you were considering an engagement." His jaw tightened. "And you thought you should return my handkerchief before I married." "I thought you should know why I left." He took the handkerchief from her hands. His fingers brushed hers, and she felt the contact like a spark. "I know why you left," he said. "You made it clear." "No," she said softly. "I didn't." He looked down at the square of linen, embroidered with his family crest. She had washed it carefully before folding it. The bloodstain was gone, though she could still remember the moment it had been given. "Then tell me," he said. She met his eyes. "Not yet. First, I need you to remember how it began. 5 years before, Lydia had arrived at Greymont House with a letter of introduction from Dr. Whitmore, the physician who had treated the late Duchess during her final illness. The letter explained that Miss Ashford was a skilled herbalist and botanical illustrator, and that she sought access to the Greymont herbarium for her research. Jonathan had been skeptical. The herbarium had been his mother's passion, left untouched since her death 3 years prior. He had no interest in plants or remedies. He had inherited a dukedom at 26 and spent his days managing estates, settling disputes, and attending to the endless tedium of responsibility. But Dr. Whitmore's letter had been persuasive, and Jonathan found himself curious. When Lydia was shown into the morning room, he had expected someone older, someone severe and scholarly, with ink-stained fingers and a distracted air. Instead, she was perhaps 28, with dark hair pinned simply and eyes the color of amber. She wore a plain gray dress and carried a leather satchel that looked well-traveled. "Your Grace," she curtsied with practiced ease. "Thank you for receiving me. Dr. Whitmore speaks highly of your work. He's generous. He says you've catalogued over 300 medicinal plants." 347, she corrected, then flushed slightly. "Forgive me. I don't mean to sound boastful. Precision is not boasting." She relaxed slightly. "I understand your mother maintained an exceptional herbarium. I've heard it contains specimens from as far as the Levant. I wouldn't know. I haven't been inside it since she died." Her expression softened. "Then perhaps it's time someone cared for it again." He had shown her to the herbarium that same afternoon. It occupied a long room on the eastern side of the house, with tall windows that let in clear morning light. Shelves lined the walls, filled with glass jars, pressed specimens, and leather-bound volumes. A work table stood in the center, its surface dusty, but still orderly. Lydia had stepped inside and gone very still. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Jonathan watched as she moved slowly along the shelves, her fingers trailing over labels, written in his mother's careful hand. She paused before a jar of dried lavender, then another of rose hips. She knew what she was doing, Lydia said. These are preserved perfectly. She spent hours here. Sometimes I think she loved this room more than any other in the house. Lydia turned to him. May I work here? I promise to disturb nothing. I only want to study and sketch. You may come as often as you like. And so it began. At first she came twice a week, then 3 times, then nearly every day. She arrived in the mornings with her satchel and her sketchbook, and she worked in focused silence, her pen moving across paper with swift, confident strokes. Jonathan found excuses to visit the herbarium, to check on her progress, to ask questions about her work, to bring her tea when the housekeeper forgot. She showed him how to identify plants by their leaves, their stems, their scent. She explained which remedies eased fever, which soothed coughs, which could be dangerous in the wrong hands. He began to see the world his mother had loved. The precision, the beauty, the quiet power of knowing how things grew and healed. And he began to see Lydia, the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, the way her voice softened when she spoke of a particularly rare specimen, the way she smiled, rare and sudden, when something delighted her. One afternoon in late spring, she was sketching a sprig of feverfew when her pen slipped. A thin line of ink marred the page. She sighed, ruined. Start again. I've been working on this for 2 hours. Then you'll finish it in 1. She looked up at him, exasperated and amused. You have remarkable faith in my abilities. I have evidence of them. She smiled then, and he felt something shift in his chest. They began to talk about things beyond plants. Her childhood in a small village in Derbyshire. Her father, a country apothecary who had taught her everything he knew. Her decision to leave home and seek her own path. It wasn't easy, she admitted. A woman traveling alone, working without a husband or family name to lend her respectability. People assumed the worst. Let them assume. You can afford to say that. You're a duke, and you're brilliant. That should be enough. She shook her head. The world doesn't work that way. Then the world is a fool. She laughed, and the sound filled the herbarium like light. The night she left had been in early autumn. The household was preparing for a large gathering. Jonathan's uncle, Lord Pemberton, had arrived with several guests, including his daughter, Clarissa, and a number of influential men from London. Lydia had been working in the herbarium, as usual. Jonathan had stopped by in the late afternoon, still dressed for riding. You should join us for dinner tonight, he said. She looked up surprised. I'm not a guest here, Your Grace. You've been here nearly every day for 8 months. You're more than a guest. Your uncle wouldn't approve. My uncle doesn't govern this house. She set down her pen. Jonathan. She used his given name rarely, and it always made him pause. I know what people think. A woman of no family, spending her days alone with a duke. It's improper. I don't care what people think. You should. Your position requires it. My position requires me to do my duty. It doesn't require me to be unhappy. She looked at him for a long moment. What are you saying? He stepped closer. I'm saying that I value your presence here. I'm saying that I've come to depend on it. I'm saying. The door opened abruptly. Lord Pemberton stood in the doorway, his expression cold. Jonathan, a word. Jonathan turned, his jaw tight. Later. Now. Lydia rose quickly. I should go. No, Jonathan said. Stay. But she was already gathering her things. She glanced at Lord Pemberton, then at Jonathan, and he saw something in her eyes he couldn't name. Fear, perhaps, or resignation. I'll return tomorrow, she said quietly. She left before he could stop her. Lord Pemberton closed the door behind her. You're making a fool of yourself, he said. I'm doing no such thing. That woman has no family, no fortune, no name. She's a tradesman's daughter, at best. She's a scholar. She's a distraction. And worse, she's a liability. Do you know what people are saying? I don't care. You should. You're a duke, Jonathan. Your marriage will be a matter of alliance, not affection. Clarissa is suitable. She's well-bred, well-connected, and willing. You could do far worse. I could also do far better. Pemberton's eyes narrowed. If you continue this association, I will make certain that woman never works in a respectable household again. I will ensure that every door in England closes to her. Do you understand? Jonathan felt cold rage settle over him. Get out. Think carefully about what you're risking. Get out of my house." Pemberton left. Jonathan stood alone in the herbarium, his hands clenched. He knew his uncle's threats were not idle. Pemberton had influence. He had connections. He could ruin Lydia's reputation with a few well-placed words. Jonathan could protect her, but only if he was willing to defy his entire family, to risk scandal, to marry her openly and without apology. And if he did that, would she even accept? She had always been fiercely independent. She had built her life on her own terms. Would she want to be bound to a duke, to a title, to a world that would scrutinize her every move? He didn't know. But he knew he couldn't let her be harmed because of him. The next morning, he wrote her a letter. He folded his handkerchief inside it and sent it to her lodgings in the village. The letter was brief. "Miss Ashford, I regret that circumstances require me to end our arrangement. The herbarium will be closed for the foreseeable future. I trust you will understand that this decision is final. I wish you well in your future endeavors." Greymont, he had signed it with his title, not his name. He told himself it was for her protection. That distance would keep her safe from his uncle's malice. That she would be better off without the burden of his world. But when the housekeeper returned and told him that Miss Ashford had left the village that same day, he felt the loss like a wound. And when weeks passed with no word, he began to believe that she had understood his letter exactly as he had feared, that he had chosen duty over her, that he had dismissed her as his uncle had wanted, that she meant nothing to him. In the 5 years since Lydia's departure, Jonathan had heard her name only twice. The first time was from Dr. Whitmore, who mentioned in passing that Miss Ashford had taken a position in Bath, working with an apothecary there. She was well, he said, busy, thriving even. Jonathan had written a reply asking for her direction, but Dr. Whitmore had responded that she had requested no further correspondence. The second time was from a London acquaintance who had seen her botanical illustrations published in a medical journal. The work was praised for its precision and artistry. Her name was gaining recognition. Jonathan had bought every copy of the journal he could find. He kept one in his desk. He told himself it was professional interest, that he was simply pleased to see her succeed. But late at night, when the house was silent, he would open the journal and trace the lines of her drawings, the delicate veins of leaves, the careful shading of petals, the tiny initials in the corner, L.A. He thought of her often, too often. He had refused every marriage proposal his family suggested. He had ignored his uncle's increasingly pointed letters. He had kept the herbarium exactly as she had left it, dust gathering on the work table, her last sketch still pinned to the board. He told himself he was waiting for nothing. But when the butler announced her name, he knew he had been waiting for her all along. Now standing in the library with her handkerchief in his hand, Jonathan listened as Lydia spoke. "After I received your letter," she said, "I didn't understand at first. I thought perhaps you had been pressured, that your uncle had said something. But the tone was so cold, so final. And the handkerchief, what about it? It was the one you gave me the day I cut my hand on a broken jar. You wrapped it around my palm and told me to keep it. I thought it meant something. It did. Then why send it back?" He looked down at the linen. "I didn't send it back. I sent it with the letter as a token, something of mine for you to keep." She stared at him. "You meant it as a gift?" "Yes. I thought you meant it as a severance, a way of saying that everything between us was finished." He closed his eyes briefly. "My God, I left because I thought you wanted me gone. Because I thought staying would only humiliate us both. I sent that letter to protect you. My uncle threatened to destroy your reputation if I continued our association. I thought if I ended things publicly, he would leave you alone." Her voice shook. "You sent me away to protect me." "Yes, and you never thought to ask what I wanted. I thought I was doing the right thing. You were deciding for me, as though I had no say in my own life." He flinched. "You're right." She looked away, her hands trembling. "I spent 5 years believing you had dismissed me like a servant, that I had misread everything between us, that I had been a fool. You were never a fool. Then why didn't you come after me? Because I thought you understood. I thought you knew what the letter meant. How could I know? You wrote 3 lines and signed it with your title." He set the handkerchief on the desk and stepped closer. I was a coward. I thought distance would keep you safe. I thought you would be better off without me. That wasn't your choice to make. I know. She turned to face him fully. There's more you need to know. Tell me. Your uncle didn't stop with threats. After I left, he sent men to Bath. They visited the apothecary where I worked. They asked questions. They implied that I had been your mistress, that I was a woman of questionable morals. Jonathan's hands curled into fists. When, 3 months after I arrived, the apothecary was kind, but his business suffered. People stopped coming. He had to let me go. Why didn't you write to me? Because I thought you had sanctioned it. I thought you wanted me gone so thoroughly that you had sent your uncle to finish the task. I would never. I know that now. But I didn't then. He felt fury and grief warring in his chest. What did you do? I found work with a physician who didn't care about rumors. I kept my head down. I built a new reputation. And I survived. You shouldn't have had to. No, she agreed. But I did. He looked at her, this woman who had endured so much because of his failure. I'm sorry, Lydia. I'm sorry for all of it. She nodded slowly. I didn't come here for an apology. Then why did you come? Because I heard you were considering marriage. And I realized that if I didn't speak now, I would never have another chance. A chance for what? To tell you the truth. To let you decide with all the facts. What truth? She took a breath. That I loved you. That I never stopped. The words hung in the air between them. Jonathan felt his heart lurch. Lydia, I don't expect anything from you, she said quickly. I know 5 years have passed. I know you have responsibilities. I just needed you to know that my leaving wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I cared too much to stay where I wasn't wanted. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He took her hands in his. You were wanted, he said fiercely. You were wanted every single day. Her eyes filled with tears. Then why didn't you fight for me? Because I thought I was fighting for you. I thought I was protecting you from a life you didn't choose. I would have chosen you, even knowing what it would cost. Yes, he lifted one hand to her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. I was a fool. Yes, she whispered. You were. Can you forgive me? I don't know yet. He nodded. That's fair. She looked up at him. There's something else you should know. What? Your uncle is still trying to ruin me. He spread rumors in Bath. He's contacted the physician I work with. He wants to ensure I can never return to respectability. Jonathan's expression hardened. He won't succeed. How can you stop him? By making it clear that you are under my protection. By making it clear that any attack on you is an attack on me. And how will you do that? He met her eyes. By asking you to marry me. She pulled back slightly. Jonathan, I know it's sudden. I know you need time. But I won't let him hurt you again. And I won't make the same mistake twice. This isn't a mistake to be corrected. This is a life. I know. And I'm asking you to share it with me. She shook her head. You're asking out of guilt. I'm asking out of love. She stared at him. You can't possibly. I've loved you since the day you told me the world was a fool. I've loved you through 5 years of silence. I'll love you whether you say yes or no. But I'm asking you to say yes. Her breath hitched. I need time. Take all the time you need. And I need to know that you won't make decisions for me again. You have my word. She looked down at their joined hands. I need to think. Then think. Stay here. Use the herbarium. Let me prove that I mean what I say. She hesitated, then nodded. 1 week. 1 week, he agreed. Lydia was given a guest room on the 2nd floor. It overlooked the gardens, where the last of the autumn roses still bloomed. The housekeeper, Mrs. Dalton, brought her tea and asked no questions. The next morning, Lydia returned to the herbarium. It was exactly as she had left it. Her last sketch still pinned to the board. Her notes still stacked on the work table. Even the jar she had broken was still there, carefully swept aside, but not discarded. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, then stepped inside. The light was the same. The scent of dried herbs was the same. The silence was the same. But she was not the same. She had left this room as a woman who believed she was unwanted. She had returned as a woman who knew her own worth. She sat down at the work table and opened her sketchbook. She began to draw. Hours passed. The light shifted. She heard footsteps in the corridor, but didn't look up. When she finally set down her pen, the sketch was finished. A sprig of rosemary, detailed and precise. She heard a soft knock. Come in. Jonathan entered, carrying a tray with tea and bread. "Mrs. Dalton, thought you might be hungry." "Thank you." He set the tray down and glanced at the sketch. "That's beautiful. It's rosemary. For remembrance." He looked at her. "Is that what you want? To remember?" "I want to understand what's worth remembering." He nodded slowly. "May I sit?" "Yes." He sat across from her, his hands folded on the table. "I spoke with my solicitor this morning." "Why?" "Because I wanted to know what legal protections I could offer you, independent of marriage." She looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean that if you choose not to marry me, I still want to ensure my uncle can't harm you. I've arranged for a trust. It will provide you with an income and a house, enough to live independently. Jonathan, I'm not trying to buy your forgiveness. I'm trying to give you a choice, a real one." She felt tears prick her eyes. "Why would you do that?" "Because you deserve to be free, whether that freedom includes me or not." She looked down at her hands. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." "I will." He rose to leave, then paused. "Lydia." "Yes, I meant what I said last night. I love you. I'll wait as long as you need." He left before she could respond. That evening, the household gathered for dinner. Lord Pemberton had departed 2 days prior, but several other guests remained. Clarissa, Jonathan's cousin, was among them. Lydia had been invited to join them. She dressed carefully in a simple blue gown. She pinned her hair and steeled herself. When she entered the dining room, conversation paused. Jonathan rose immediately. "Miss Ashford, please sit beside me." She took the offered seat, aware of every eye on her. Clarissa, seated across the table, smiled politely. "Miss Ashford, I've heard so much about your work." "Have you?" "Jonathan speaks of you often." Lydia glanced at him. He met her gaze without flinching. "Miss Ashford is a botanist," he said. "She's published extensively." "How fascinating," Clarissa said. Her tone was pleasant, but her eyes were cool. "It must be difficult, working in a field dominated by men." "It has its challenges. I imagine it requires a great deal of independence." "It does. And you've never married?" Lydia felt the question land like a blade. "No, how unusual." Jonathan's voice was quiet but firm. "Miss Ashford has dedicated her life to her work. That's admirable, not unusual." Clarissa's smile didn't waver. "Of course." The conversation moved on, but Lydia felt the tension linger. After dinner, the guests retired to the drawing room. Lydia stood near the window, watching the moonlight on the gardens. Clarissa approached. "Miss Ashford, may I speak plainly?" "Please." "I don't know what arrangement you have with Jonathan, but I think you should know that his family expects him to marry appropriately. And you believe I'm not appropriate. I believe you're intelligent enough to see the reality. A duke cannot marry a woman of no family. It would be a scandal. Then perhaps the problem is not with me, but with a world that values birth over character." Clarissa's expression hardened. "You may think yourself above society, but Jonathan is not. He has duties, responsibilities. He cannot simply follow his heart." "Why not?" "Because that's not how the world works." Lydia met her gaze. "Then perhaps it's time the world changed." Clarissa turned and walked away. Jonathan appeared at Lydia's side. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing I haven't heard before." "Lydia, she's right, you know. Your family will never accept me." "I don't care. You should. A scandal would hurt you." "Let it." She looked at him. "You're willing to risk everything." "For you?" "Yes." She felt her resolve waver. "Jonathan, I can't be the reason you lose your position." "You won't be. I'll be the reason. Because I choose you." She turned away, her heart pounding. "I need air." She left the drawing room and walked out into the gardens. The next morning, Lydia woke to find a note slipped under her door. "The dispensary in the village has been reopened. I thought you might want to see it." She dressed quickly and walked down to the village. The small stone building stood near the church, its windows freshly cleaned, and its door newly painted. Inside, shelves had been stocked with jars and bottles. A work table stood in the center, and a sign on the wall read, "Greymont Dispensary, free remedies for those in need." Mrs. Dalton was there, organizing supplies. "Miss Ashford," she said warmly, "His Grace thought you might appreciate this." "He did this?" "He did. Said the village needed proper care, and that you were the one to provide it." Lydia felt tears sting her eyes. "When?" "He's been planning it for weeks, since he heard you were in Bath." Lydia sank into a chair. "I don't understand." Mrs. Dalton smiled. "Don't you?" That evening, Lydia found Jonathan in the library. "You reopened the dispensary," she said. "Yes. Why?" "Because the village needs it. And because I thought you might want a place to work. If you stay." "Jonathan, I'm not trying to manipulate you. I'm trying to show you that I see you. That I value what you do. That I want to build a life where you can be yourself." She crossed the room and took his hands. "I've been so afraid." "Of what?" "Of losing myself. Of becoming someone I'm not. Of being trapped." "I would never trap you." "I know, but the world would." He pulled her closer. "Then we'll fight the world together." She looked up at him. "You really mean that?" "Every word." She took a shaky breath. "I love you, Jonathan. I've loved you for 5 years. But I need to know that you won't try to protect me by making decisions for me. I won't. I swear it. And I need to know that you'll let me work. That you'll let me be more than a duchess. You'll always be more than a title. You'll be Lydia. And that's enough." She felt the last of her resistance crumble. "Then yes, I'll marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. It was gentle and fierce, and full of 5 years of longing. When they finally pulled apart, she was laughing and crying at the same time. "I can't believe I'm doing this," she said. "Neither can I. Your family will be furious. Let them be. Society will talk. Let them talk." She smiled. "You're insufferable. And you're brilliant." He kissed her again. And this time she didn't pull away. The announcement of their engagement caused exactly the scandal Lydia had predicted. Lord Pemberton wrote a scathing letter. Clarissa left Greymont House without saying goodbye. Several families withdrew their invitations. Jonathan didn't care. He stood beside Lydia at every gathering. He introduced her as his future wife. He made it clear that any slight against her was a slight against him. Slowly, reluctantly, society began to accept her. Dr. Whitmore attended the wedding and gave a speech praising Lydia's contributions to medicine. The physician from Bath sent a letter of congratulation. Her botanical illustrations were displayed in the entrance hall of Greymont House. On their wedding night, Jonathan led her to the herbarium. The room had been transformed. Candles flickered on every surface. Fresh flowers filled the jars. And on the work table, carefully framed, was her very first sketch, the one she had thought ruined. "You kept it," she whispered. "I kept everything." She turned to him, tears streaming down her face. "I don't deserve you. You deserve everything." He kissed her, and she felt the weight of 5 years lift. In the music room, late one night, Lydia sat at the piano. She didn't play often, but tonight she felt the need for music. Jonathan stood in the doorway, watching her. "I didn't know you played," he said. "My father taught me. I haven't touched a piano in years." "Why not?" "Because it reminded me of home, of everything I left behind." He crossed the room and sat beside her on the bench. "Do you regret it? Leaving?" "No, but I regret the years we lost. We have years ahead of us." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't come back?" "Every day. And I think I would have spent the rest of my life waiting." She lifted her head and kissed him. "I'm glad I came back." "So am I." She played a few notes, tentative at first, then more confident. The melody filled the room, soft and haunting. Jonathan listened, his hand resting on hers. When the music faded, she turned to him. "I want to put the handkerchief in the herbarium. Press it between the pages of your mother's journal, so it's always there." "Why?" "Because it's part of our story. The misunderstanding, the separation, the return. I want to remember all of it." He nodded. "Then that's where it belongs." Years later, visitors to Greymont House would occasionally ask about the herbarium. They would admire the carefully preserved specimens. They would study the botanical illustrations lining the walls. And sometimes, if they were very observant, they would notice a pressed handkerchief tucked between the pages of an old leather journal. The housekeeper would smile and say it belonged to the Duchess. And if they asked why, she would simply say, "It's a long story, but it has a happy ending." Because in the end, what remained was not the scandal or the separation or the years of silence. What remained was two people who had found each other again, who had chosen love over fear, who had built a life on respect and trust and the quiet courage to begin again. And that, the housekeeper would say, was worth remembering.